Love your local nonprofits and build a better community with a gift that costs you nothing today. Name a Valley nonprofit in your estate plan and create a legacy that tells future generations what mattered to you. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Your action will inspire others to make a difference in their own way. Remember the Valley. Ask your accountant, financial planner, or attorney about planned giving options. Plan now, give later, impact tomorrow. Learn more at valleygivesback.org.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. For any info we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur.
Hey everybody, that song you just heard is Ride the Dinosaur by the Bad Slugs, a band based here in Connecticut. And I'm Eugene Driscoll. Welcome back to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. The Valley Indy is a nonprofit online newspaper in Connecticut's lower Naugatuck Valley. Today, my guest is Seymour First Selectman Kurt Miller. Welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Miller.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, Eugene.
This podcast, by the way, is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. So Kurt is here to answer questions submitted publicly by Valley Indy Facebook readers. But before we get into the questions, of which there are many, for which I am very grateful, Seymour always comes through when it's time to question First Selectman Miller, which is awesome. But I just want to tell people that Twisted Vine, a restaurant on Main Street in Derby, will be featured 9 p.m. Friday, January 31st on Kindred Spirits, a paranormal investigative type show on the Travel Channel. Twisted Vine will be hosting a viewing party, and here is a quick promo for the episode.
On Travel Channel, it's an all-new Kindred Spirits.
We are investigating the Twisted Vine restaurant. They have a lot of activity, and they have been having it for decades.
We have a gentleman now. He's not a man. You can see through him.
I've never seen anything like it.
Did you kill yourself?
Is there someone here?
You want us to get the hell out of your building?
I saw a shadow.
What?
That's going off. Everything is literally going crazy.
What's happening right here?
All new Kindred Spirits, Friday at 9 on Travel Channel and Travel Channel Go.
For more information, call Twisted Vine at 203-734-2462. All right, Mr. Miller, are you ready? There are so many questions. I have questions for you. I'm not even going to ask my questions. Forget my questions. They don't matter. The people of Seymour, I guess because you haven't been on this podcast in a little bit, you were boycotting it for some reason. I'm still trying to figure that out. But are you ready? Are you ready to go?
Boycotting? I thought I'd lost my spot to Bowen.
Bowen came through in a pinch. I needed a podcast. I was like, I got to do a podcast. And then with 10 minutes notice, I was like, Bowen, let's talk about all the people that are going nuts on the Valley Indy Facebook page. And he came through. But
it was like a Seinfeld episode. You guys talked about nothing for a half hour. I mean, it was fantastic.
It was fantastic.
I listened to it cover to cover.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I'm one of the 7 people, so I mean, be excited.
Whoa! All right, little insult to the Bowen, I guess. There, whatever.
No, not to you. Bowen makes it entertaining.
All right. So anyway, let's get to the community center. All right, there are a bunch of questions on there about the community center. The plan of which is, I guess, in the works in some way. You'll explain. But Shane White, he posed a question: what's going on with a new community center?
Well, at our last Board of Selectmen meeting, we formed a community center building committee whose charge it will be to plan a path forward to putting a new community center back in front of the people. I'm not sure that it will necessarily have a vote, but this will be the group.
I'm sorry. You said back in front of the people, but it won't have a vote.
Right.
Help me on.
Well, I mean, our plan is to have multiple town meetings, giving people the opportunity to come and make specific comment. One of the things we found, when we put it out to vote, that was, and you and I have talked about that in the past, that was more to get it out in front of people, to kind of get people's attention, to make people aware of what was going on. We put out some general details, some things, some vision that we had, but the charge of this group is going to be to take that vision and put it into a format that we can now put in front of the people and say, what do you like? And then we'll continue to fine-tune that over several months until we have a finished product that, again, we'll put back in front of the people for final comment, and then we'll make determinations as to how we move forward.
Okay, and that question that was on the ballot, it was rejected by residents, right? I don't remember.
The question on the ballot was, it was simply, could we borrow the money? And we knew going in, I thought for sure that it would get killed, the question, because we didn't have, it's a lot of money to ask for with not a finished product that people can actually specifically vote on. They were essentially voting on, a theory of what it could be. I thought that it would lose by a substantially larger margin. I was actually surprised how relatively close that it was. So that, has kind of inspired us that people do want a new community center. I think a lot of the no votes, and if you saw some of the, the posts and the back and forth, people are like, I love the idea, but I can't vote on something that I don't know what it is. And that makes 100% sense to me. So now we're going to provide them all of that information. If we do not go out, if we do not need to borrow the money, and I don't anticipate that we will, we don't necessarily need to have a referendum vote. At that point, it could be done through a town meeting. It could be done a part of the budget process. There's a lot of different ways that we can go without having to put it on a ballot.
Okay, and so that the committee, the community center committee, was formed. I guess, we're recording this on January 29th. It was at your last Selectman meeting, which was last week, I believe.
It was on the 21st, the day before my 50th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you. You did wish me a happy birthday.
I did.
It was your birthday, yesterday, the day before?
Yesterday was my birthday, yes.
Yeah.
I've just turned 30, so it's a big leap for me,
Yeah, I'm substantially older than you, so it's...
So we had a question from Jennifer Magri, very well known in the Naugatuck Valley.
I don't know Jen.
Okay. All right, President Trump. Can Kurt...
I'm about to get a scathing text message from her in about 30 seconds.
Never, no, don't know the guy. All right, so
don't know her.
Can Kurt please explain how the members of the Community Center Building Committee were selected? While each member is certainly knowledgeable and capable, there certainly is not diversity among the members. Shouldn't the makeup of the committee also, to some extent, be representative of the diversity within our community to ensure that any building would work for all?
Well, Jen and I are good friends, and, all kidding aside about not knowing who she is. I challenge that statement a little bit. The goal of this group is to physically build the community center. So if you look at the people that we have on there, we have our engineer, we have our town building official, we have our director of maintenance, we have our chair of our board of finance, but we also have Suzanne Riley, who represents the Commission on the Aging, as well as the Livable Communities Commission, and we have Zach Philippas, who is our recreation program manager. So we have their input directly when it comes to the building of this building. But what we're going to do is we're going to rely heavily on input from the residents.
What about, I would assume, just based on the community discussions that the City of Derby had over the years before they got grant money and private money donations to build their new athletic complex. Mm-hmm. They had put, if I remember correctly, and I'm probably butchering this, but I think maybe this is what Jen is going towards. There was controversy, a little bit of controversy in Derby. Well, why didn't you put the head of the soccer commission on this, or the youth league head on this commission? Was there any thought into doing that, because they're sort of in the day-to-day, not grunt work, but they're in the trenches there with the kids, and they understand what the community needs in terms of athletic facilities?
To be honest, no, because again, it's about building a building. And I think we have enough knowledge on the committee itself to do that. But again, we're going to be reaching out to all of these groups to provide input. The problem is if you get a committee that's too big, it gets cumbersome. It can't do the work that it needs to do. So I think we have enough people on this group to be able to incorporate all the input from the residents, all the input from, whether it be the Little Leagues, the Pop Warners, the Soccers, all the activities that are out there, to allow them to have a say in what goes on. The problem is we're building this community center that's going to touch so many things that if we include someone from soccer, then we have to include someone from baseball and football and basketball. And then you have your arts, because we want to make sure that this building is able to allow, music and art and everything else that comes along with that. The committee would be too big, it would be unmanageable. So again, it was about putting together a group of people that would be able to get a building built that could talk at a higher level with developers. That's kind of the big thing. We'll put the vision out. The residents and all the groups will be able to weigh in on that, and we'll do that with live meetings. We'll do that with surveys going out to the residents. We'll take feedback at meetings. We'll keep putting it back in front of the people. All of our meetings will be public.
When does the Community Center Building Committee start meeting?
We're working on finding a date that works for the committee in the beginning of February.
Okay.
And then once we have that, then we'll establish a set meeting schedule. So that way the public will be aware of when that meeting schedule is, and it's open to the public. So we'll take public comment beginning and end of the meeting. We'll certainly allow certain groups to participate in certain discussions. I mean, it can't be a free-for-all, or we'll never get any work done. But, I mean, it'll be a little bit more lax than a normal, let's say, Board of Selectmen meeting, Board of Finance meeting, Board of Education meeting, because we want some input from the residents.
Okay, and then sticking with the community center for a moment, this was from Julie Lynn, and this is more of an observation or comment as opposed to a question, but she says, Community Center Committee, glad that is now going to start up soon. If the committee eventually decides to sell 20 Pine Street, that's the current community center, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then the town should really retain ownership of number 5 Pine Street, the public parking lot and skate park, and also keep number 2 Pine Street, the back lot. Without that public parking lot, there's nowhere to park for the Broad Street Park, nor could it be used for parade staging any longer if sold as a 3-parcel unit. So that was Julie's comment. Kathy Creighton, I kind of clipped this. I hate the English language. From another comment she had. She says, and I think this is connected to the community center in some way, progress of development behind Stop and Shop.
That parcel of land is owned by the Haynes family. Mm-hmm. I've had multiple conversations with Tom Haynes. His plan is to kick that development off once Quarry Walk is done. Quarry Walk, I believe they have probably about another 12 months or so there. And then his plan is to come and start that same process in Seymour, in that land behind Stop and Shop that stretches into Beacon Falls.
And I would assume possibly, maybe, ideally, in a perfect world, that would be a good location for a community center because it's in a perfect location, centrally located in town. Is that a possibility?
I mean, the land behind Stop and Shop does present a lot of positives for a community center. One, it is centrally located, and if I did a poll about 2 weeks ago to ask people just to kind of gauge their temperature as to where they thought the community center was. And about 80% of the people said they wanted somewhere in the downtown area.
Okay.
So if we're going to put in the downtown area, it needs to be a place that can absorb the parking, can absorb the traffic flow. The area behind Stop and Shop, I think, would be ideal for that. But the other value that potentially going behind Stop and Shop brings is the ability to regionalize with the town of Beacon Falls. So if we'd always talked about putting a connecting road that connects Route 67 and Route 42 that runs parallel to Route 8 right along the water, if the Hayneses are able to put this development behind there, if our community center is behind there, obviously that road is going to need to be put in. That now provides easy access for residents of Beacon Falls to use the community center as well. So now we can go into a public-private partnership potentially where we're sharing costs in some formula with the town of Beacon Falls. So again, we're going to be able to hopefully provide this much-needed amenity to the residents of Seymour, but if we could eliminate some or a great deal of the costs, I mean, there's tremendous value to our residents for that.
Okay. Thank you for that answer, and thank you, Kathy Creighton, for posting that question on Valley Indy Facebook. If I sound a little bit distracted, I got a cat on Christmas Eve, and it's a little kitten, and the thing is right now tearing apart my couch, so I might have to use some in a second.
Let's say get a little spray bottle.
Yeah, it's really it's just chaos, the thing. All right, so regionalization. This is also a question from Jennifer Magri. And
she has a 2-question limit, just for the record.
This is
Anything over 2 questions, she's got to send a donation to the Valley Indy.
I like that Jennifer is off the school board and now breaking your chops a little here, because this is a good question, because I'm like, where is this? You guys have been talking, and I watched the video of your last meeting, and you bring up this regionalization issue, but still no one's really giving any concrete details other than we're having discussions. But, okay, so Jennifer asked, I editorialized there. This is the actual question without my slant. Can Kurt please elaborate on the regionalization discussions that he is having with Derby and Ansonia? What services are being considered and why?
I would say every service is being considered. I don't think there's anything that's off the table. But realistically, there's not a lot of matches between all 3 towns. The matches seem to be a little bit stronger between Ansonia and Derby. But we are looking at every option, every avenue, just to see if there's anything that makes sense. Some of the things that we've talked about, regionalizing our dispatch as an example. We've talked about, having a regional fire range in the new Ansonia police station. We've talked about senior centers. We've talked about recreation. We've talked about certain services that the towns provide, whether it be engineering, whether it be building officials, whether it be enforcement officers. Just to look at different ways where we could provide better service to the residents and do so in a more cost-effective way to the towns and cities.
And you've been talking about this for a while, right? I mean, at least since the last spring.
Yeah, we've definitely been, kicking around a lot of different scenarios. Do
you have any like ETA when you'll actually have a plan, or maybe you won't? When does this stop or move forward, and when does the public get an idea of exactly what you're talking about?
I think by springtime you may see a few things come out for public input, just to gauge the feeling of the residents. There's some things that look fantastic on paper, make a ton of sense financially, but residents they don't care about the savings. They don't want to lose, their neighborhood. I don't know, a library as an example. I'm just making something up. I'm not saying the library's on the table, but could you build one or have one Valley Library as an example that was open 7 days a week, that was open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, that had a lot more programming, a lot more technology and things like that. Is that a greater benefit to residents as opposed to the convenience of your town library? So it's discussions like that you have to weigh out the financial impact versus, I guess, the residential convenience impact, and make a decision as to what's best.
And then do unions play an important role and a possible impediment in some of these discussions? I mean, like merging police departments. That's one that I've heard over the years. But if they have different unions or different pay rates, that complicates it. And I've heard the same thing with the school districts. Is that something? Is that a major issue? Not to cast unions in a negative or positive light. I mean, obviously they're positive, but is that a thing you're dealing with as well? Or am I just talking?
There are potential issues that arise from that because you have different bargaining units, and they have different pay rates, they have different benefits, they have different contract language. Bringing that all together sometimes can be problematic. So it's how you work through that. The state of Connecticut, the legislature has talked about this for years, and this is something that, CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, that we, in our lobbying efforts every year, we go to them and we say, you want regionalization to be a big push. You want towns and cities to be doing this. You need to give us the tools to be able to do that. So in, an example, and, let's just stay with the library because that's kind of what we started with. We have unionized workers in Seymour in the library. We have unionized workers in, let's just say, Derby in the library. If we were to build one library that represented or serviced the two towns, I should say, we should be able to say, okay, these are the positions that we're going to fill. These are all going to be union positions. It's a brand new union contract, and people can now apply for those jobs and move in. So it's not about essentially busting up unions, but it's about giving us the ability to negotiate now with just one entity.
Okay.
Where a lot of these regionalization cases, you're negotiating with two different unions to try to create a third union in the middle. And in some of these cases, that's what's holding up regionalization, because it's the ability to come to an agreement between what employees are willing to accept versus what management may be willing to accept.
This podcast is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. Love your local nonprofits and build a better community with a gift that costs you nothing today. Name a Valley nonprofit in your estate plan and create a legacy that tells future generations what mattered to you. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Your action will inspire others to make a difference in their own way. Remember the Valley. Ask your accountant, financial planner, or attorney about planned giving options. Plan now, give later, impact tomorrow. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. Okay, moving on to the next set of questions. I subtitled this, Fix My Road.
Fix My Road.
We had a bunch of